Hey guys, this is Jochen, welcome to my channel. Everybody in the Fuji world is talking about the new Fujifilm X-S10 that has been announced yesterday. I think the approach to this camera is really interesting and I would love to get my hands on it. But today I would like to take a look at another camera with you, the Fujifilm X-T200. It offers an entry into the world of the Fuji-X system cameras much more than the X-S10. It may not be as customizable as the new model, but it is easier and more intuitive to use for beginners. Who is it for? What can it do? What makes it different from other cameras in the series? Here we go! First, as usual, don't forget to subscribe to my channel using the button below. That would really help me a lot. And if you really like my content, you could buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. Look in the description for the link. Well, here it is, the Fujifilm X-T200. This is a device that Fujifilm Germany kindly gave me to test for free. But just as a disclaimer in advance, I am not paid for this video, nor do I have to hold back my personal opinion. First of all, briefly about the X-T200 in general. It was released in January 2020 and is available in silver, like this model here, in dark silver, and they call it champagne gold. I will not go into every detail here, but a short list of specifications. We're talking about a camera with a 24.2 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor. In terms of video function, it offers 4K with 30 frames per second and 15 minutes recording limit, as well as Full HD with 60 frames per second with 30 minutes recording limit. It has a really fast autofocus with face eye recognition, a burst mode for photos with up to 8 frames per second, an 8.9 cm or 3.5 inch touchscreen with a 180-degree selfie flippability. It has the possibility of electronic image stabilization in video and a so-called digital gimbal for video recording. 20 creative filters including clarity and 11 film simulations. The X-T200 weighs 370 grams and the cheapest price in October 2020 as a kit with a 15 to 45 is around 800 euros in Germany. In the USA the regular price is $799, but it only costs $499 at B&H at the moment, and the camera is apparently also available as a body-only package for around $450, and I tell you, this price is great. Let's talk about the body and the connections. It is a compact camera in DSLR style, as you can see, lightweight and therefore long to carry. It has a screen that can be folded out to the side and then fully turned to the front, but more on that later. The camera also has an inbuilt flash, which can be accessed via a little switch next to this dial here. The body is made entirely of plastic, but it feels quite high quality and above all, it doesn't look cheap. The grip offers a decent feel, but not for my entire hand. I have pretty big hands. The X-T200 has a completely different operating concept than the Fuji-X cameras that I usually use, but more on that later. Overall, however, everything is actually tidy and clear. The X-T200 has no splash water or dust protection, but in my opinion you can really get over that when you are new to the Fuji-X world. There is an USB-C connection for charging the battery in the housing, for transferring images to the computer, and for using the camera as a webcam with the Fuji-X webcam app. I've used that several times in my job and I have to say that my colleagues are always quite impressed with the image quality. An adapter is included with the camera to use the USB-C port to connect headphones. So unfortunately charging and listening at the same time are not possible. But I think that's to be tolerated with this camera class and its compactness. For connection of an external recorder or simply to connect an external screen, the X-T200 has a micro HDMI port on board. In addition, there is a microphone connection on the other side of the body with a not widely used 2.5mm jack, as with all more compact cameras from Fujifilm. Here too you usually need an adapter, but at least there is a microphone connection. The battery chamber and the SD card slot are down here. The battery, by the way, is the good old NPW126S, used for all the latest cameras except for the X-T4, the same as in the X-T3 or X100V. About the usability of this camera. Actually, I should say, everything I love about my Fujifilm cameras regarding the analog approach is missing on the X-T200 and the kit lens. No ISO dial, no aperture ring, no shutter speed dial. The basic settings are made using a mode dial on top of the body. Here we find the usual photo modes, but there is also a full automatic, a panorama, advanced filters and scene modes for different occasions like night shooting, sports, landscape. In SP mode you can select additional scenes yourself. Nevertheless, with what I'm doing right now, I absolutely belong to the target group, and I think the camera is really well suited for this, for vlogging. When I flip the screen to the front and take selfies or film myself for YouTube, I can't do anything with beautiful mechanical control dials. I can only reach it very poorly or not at all from this side of the camera. The accessibility of all important functions via touchscreen is very well implemented on the X-T200. The screen reacts quickly, I can even assign 2 switches on the menu here. Everything I need to react to changed situations in selfie mode is very easy to reach. Nevertheless, there are some mechanical possibilities that allow me to create a real Fuji camera feeling. There is this dial on the shutter release button that changes its function depending on the mode. For example, the setting of the aperture in mode A, the shutter speed in mode S and shifting in mode P. The rear dial is used for exposure correction except in mode M for manual, since the front dial sets the aperture and the rear dial sets the shutter speed. In addition to the control dials, there are 2 physical buttons that can be assigned. Out of old habit, I put the Q menu and the ISO setting in the back here. All in all, these are of course fewer options than with most other Fujifilm X cameras, but as I said, the focus here is clearly on the touchscreen. There is a button at the top for quickly starting a video, which also works when I'm in photo mode and is arranged in such a way that it is also easily accessible in the selfie position. So here again, a real advantage for vlogging. The on-off switch is not very well positioned and really small, and it's difficult to use with my large hands. I understand why it doesn't hang on the shutter release, as the dial is used differently, but maybe it should have been better attached to the back of the body. Another downer, I can't save custom settings. I think that's a shame, because I have to keep making new settings for my different scenarios all the time. But overall, I have to say that I'm very positively surprised by the operation of the camera, especially for selfies and for vlogging. Let's talk about the software side of this camera. We have 8 film simulations on board the X-T200 called ProVR, VelVR, Astia, Classic Chrome, Pro Negative High, Pro Negative Standard, Monochrome with different filters, and Sepia. Acros, Eterna, Eterna Bleach Bypass and Classic NEC unfortunately are not on board. I can't explain each and every one here on this video, but you will be able to find a lot of information about them on the internet. In addition, there are also some creative filters available to play around with, including some very useful ones like clarity, but also more senseless ones like the fisheye lens, which I will never use. I think it's nice to have it, but not very remarkable. Let's talk about the X-T200 regarding photography. For me personally, switching from my X-T3 or X100V to the X-T200 would of course be a downgrade, at least in the field of photography. I like the analog operating concept of my Fuji cameras too much for that, and I miss my crucial film simulations on the X-T200, Acros, Classic NEC and Eterna. But that's understandable. My X-T3 and X100V cost significantly more and are also intended for a different target group. Apart from that, I can only say positive things about taking photos with the Fujifilm X-T200. The autofocus works quickly and reliably. With ProVR, Classic Chrome and Pro Negative High, there are 3 other favorites in the area of film simulations. The image quality is really good. What more could a beginner want? Only the kit lens is really not my cup of tea, even if the image quality is absolutely fine. Nevertheless, the 15 to 45mm focal length covers an interesting area from landscape or architecture to portrait photography, but the opening aperture 3.5 at 15mm or 5.6 in the telephoto range is often not fast enough for me. I would rather get by without a zoom and instead use one of the great f2 lenses from from Fuji. I haven't tested it myself yet, but if you can go without an aperture ring, you should, for example, look at the cheap XC35mm f2. From the inside, this should correspond exactly to the more expensive XF35mm f2, and this is really a super great lens. Great quality, super fast autofocus and sufficiently fast with f2. And the XC version costs just under 200 bucks. If you have a little more in your wallet and maybe even enjoy a real aperture ring, the small WR series is a great set of focal length for this camera. 60mm 2.8, 23mm f2, the already mentioned 35 f2 and 50mm f2. Maybe Fujifilm will also bring them out in XC versions, I don't know. And of course you can also use all other lenses from the large selection of the Fuji-X system on this camera, but that's another topic. To get started, the kit may be enough if you can handle the maximum aperture. The quality is always right. I'll just show you some of the pictures that I took with this camera together with the kit lens over the last few days. On the subject of video, the X-T200 is an almost perfect vlogging camera. The rotating screen with the touch operation from here is particularly positive. The microphone connection is good to have, the weight is really low, the camera can also be carried on a mini tripod for a while during recording, which can be started at any time with the recording button, which is well positioned at the front. The face and eye autofocus works quickly and reliably, but see for yourself. With an OIS lens like this kit lens here, you have real stabilization on board. So I tested it with the kit lens only, then with the digital image stabilization, and then with the so-called digital gimbal. Okay guys, this is lens stabilization only. Let's try this out. Try to keep it calm as possible. Let's see what we'll get. Now this is with digital image stabilization switched on. I think it's a little smoother, if I see it right. Okay, the digital gimbal does a lot of cropping. The camera has no IBIS, meaning a physical in-body image stabilization, but it seems to me to work quite well digitally, but of course only with videos. With photos you have to stick to the good old rules of focal length and shutter speed. What is not so popular with video recordings are the recording limitations. 15 minutes maximum with 4K, 30 minutes with Full HD. Well, I shoot my videos in Full HD and almost never record longer than 30 minutes at a time. But if you record in 4K, 15 minutes are in any case not so much. The kit lens is also not particularly bright for vlogging also, and you can only create a small amount of separation from the background if you're shooting wide. I'm not necessarily missing recording with f-log, but the fact that the Eterna film simulation is missing, which gives other Fujifilm X cameras a special cinema look, is a little shame. So let's come to my conclusion. For whom is this camera? Fujifilm itself speaks of young creatives as the target group for the X-T200, and in my opinion that fits very well. The smartphone generation is addressed, who are on Instagram and or YouTube a lot and want a more professional tool for creating their posts. Fujifilm offers a classic, if you want, vintage DSLR style camera for non-professional hybrid shooters with a clear focus on fast and high quality content creation, in contrast to pure photography or videography with an analog feeling as with the other cameras of the X series. Even if for me personally the other approach more in the direction of analog feeling has always felt right, and I'm therefore at home with the Fuji-X system, I still consider the implementation in the X-T200 to be absolutely successful despite some minor disadvantages. As an X-T3 owner, I can even get a little jealous looking at the touchscreen and looking in the direction of the X-T4, which has a similar screen installed, because I think this thing here is really great for some occasions. This camera could definitely be an option for my YouTube activities, also for a vacation with my kids where I only want to take photos in ProVR anyway. It would be a good option due to its low weight, but maybe better with a 35mm f2 lens. If you're looking for something more semi-professional, which is more focused on photography, I recommend taking a look at the X-T30 or the X100V as an alternative. Have a look at my battle of the cams. But as a conclusion to the X-T200, for an entry into the world of Fuji-X cameras or for someone specializing in video or hybrid content creation, I can absolutely recommend the X-T200. Well, I hope you found my video helpful and maybe liked it. And remember, the camera is only a tool for whatever you're going to do anyway. Go out and have fun. Well, that's it for today. Please give me a like and maybe even leave me a subscription. Thank you for watching and take care of yourself in these strange times. Ciao.